2014, and black people all over the world, we've come a long way. Right here in America, we have our very first ever black president, Barack Obama. What an accomplishment, right? But now, through it all, it ain't been easy. We've gone through slavery, discrimination, the fight for civil rights, so many things. The protests, the speeches, man, what a history. Now, I live in Harlem, where African Americans, we're advanced. And so many African immigrants are all over the place. But have we arrived? Do you know that more than 100,000 African immigrants live in New York City? Discover the lifestyles of Africans living and working in the city. Africa in the city. Real Africans, real stories. We're here in Harlem right now, a lot of black folks around. Do you think that we have made it as black people?
Not really, because if you look around, you would see that there's a lot of black people. But we're just walking up and down. Basically, we are consumers. We don't own anything. Even the very buildings where we live, we don't own it. You know what I'm saying?
But it's 2014.
No,
why
we should own it. You see what I'm saying? Because it's 2014.
Come on, man. Where we at today, black man? You join the religion of your slave masters. Y'all, the brother brought it up. The Arabs played a major part in the transatlantic slave trade, man. They was building the boats. They were master ship makers, man. And they built them boats that your ancestors got shipped over here on. But yet you going to join their religion, the same people that murdered you.
These are the Black Israelites. They blast the white man for the oppression of African Americans. They disassociate themselves with continental Africans and believe that African Americans are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites.
Brother said that he broke the covenant. Let's get back. Let's get that. I'm going to tell you something, man. We don't play them games out here, black man, black woman.
Now rewind back to the days of Malcolm X. He preached that to reach full potential, the African American must embrace their true identity.
In a vicious cycle of poverty, of ignorance, of apathy, of disease, and of death. And they have these old Uncle Tom's Negro leaders coming to Harlem telling you and me that times are getting better.
Between us and this brother right here, and this devil, this fake Jew, gonna come up here and say anything to the priest of the Lord. These so-called Jews, they don't fear you no more. They don't fear you no more, black man. Black man, bastards like this stole your culture. They stole your culture. They stole your land. Look, the white man went into Israel in the 1940s. That's not even his land. He went in your land in the 1940s. He stole your culture, man. Go ahead. My brother. Oh, you an Arab. Okay. Oh, you an Arab. Okay, so you an undercover terrorist. Look, y'all let the Arabs come in here too. So not only the white people, y'all let them Arabs who's selling y'all chicken come up in there too. That's your brother. Don't give him a hug.
The land of Jesus. I'm
Give
from
him a hug.
Bethlehem.
That's your brother right there.
My
Right?
brother?
That's your brother. He's a
I'm
Muslim.
brother. I'm
He's a
from
Muslim.
Bethlehem.
He's a Muslim. Do you love
I'm
your
a Christian,
brother?
Jack.
You're a Christian?
I'm a-
Oh, so you're a traitor to Arabs. You all
I'm a
messed up,
traitor to
man.
Arabs?
Look, we got an Arab traitor in the building. Forget you. I'm going back to my scriptures, man. Go ahead.
Hey, chapter 21, verse 19.
The conversation on the streets of Harlem today has changed drastically, no matter the era. To me, the question still remains for a lot of us African Americans is, who are we? Who am I? Where do I come from? The greatest tragedy to beset the black race is unarguably the transatlantic slave trade. It started with a group of European sailors, you know, the Portuguese, French, English, the Dutch, and Spanish. They discovered societies living along the coast of West Africa during initial trading expeditions, and this began the separation of the African identity. Now, majority of Africans were captured throughout the 18th century, that's the 1700s, with the Portuguese, British, and French being the main capturers. Families were broken up and Africans were spread all around the world. And out of this grew an identity crisis within the Black community. I was born in the deep South, Alabama. And like many other African Americans, growing up there, we knew very little about our history. It wasn't until I traveled to Africa that I became fully aware of my Blackness. And from then on, I would always question my identity. You think that some of the problems that we face kind of go back to slavery and then loss of identity? And
of course, without a doubt. Without a doubt, because that's something that was whipped out of us. And for purposes that still relate to us today. You know, when people are not proud of being who they are, and we, within our own community, having our own prejudice against one another for whatever reasons, be it economical, be it skin tone, or what have you. All things like that hurt us.
Until we start teaching young African-American children their story, their true story,
which is
the richness of their African heritage, until they can understand where they come from, where their ancestors come from true, being the first people and being people of royalty, it's not going to change much. Because you see it in the younger generation, you see it. They don't really have no real direction.
I've always thought about those questions. I think it's time for me now to try to find the answers. Several African Americans are picking up the trend of rediscovering their roots using popular DNA testing companies. So I decided to travel from New York City to the African Ancestry headquarters to learn my true identity. I'm so excited. So I'm about to do the first step to getting my ancestry history. Let's go. African Ancestry 303.
So the test that you took is our matriclan test, and that's going to trace your maternal ancestry. So you, your mother, her mother, her mother, her mother, all the way back 500 to 2,000 years. We're going to send your swabs to the lab that we use out in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they're sent confidentially, so they have no idea who you are. They're going to extract the DNA from those swabs and then sequence it, or basically unlock your maternal genetic fingerprint. And then Dr. Kittles will compare your DNA lineage to our database of indigenous African DNA lineages to look for a match. That's what will enable us to, if your results are African, tell you the present day country in Africa and also the ethnic group or groups in that country. There are about 5 countries that we find the most often: Nigeria, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, and Liberia. So it's definitely West African.
From your professional standpoint, if you were to look at me, I mean, just if you can guess, where would you?
I wouldn't.
You couldn't.
I wouldn't. Dr. Kittles does that sometimes, but I have no idea. You're from Africa. That's the best I can do.
Africa in the city. Real Africans, real stories.